Hello, and welcome to the Outdoorsy Diva podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, the Outdoorsy Diva. Thanks for joining. Hey y'all, this is Lauren, the Outdoorsy Diva. Thank you so much for being back with me for season 3. I'm loving the feedback that I got with our season 3 kickoff episode from episode 22 last week with the Cowgirls of Color. It has been absolutely wonderful to hear how much you enjoyed those awesome women. And if you haven't checked it out, go back and listen to episode 22 with the Cowgirls of Color. I promise you will not regret it. So let's get into it. What are we talking about today on episode 23? Well, we're going to talk about an outdoor activity that is common. Many of you know and love, but it's something that I know a lot of people are hesitant to get into. So we're going to talk about hiking. I'm going to give you some tips and advice on how to get started as a newbie, things to consider, gear that you might want to purchase, and I'm also going to share with you, as always, my failures, my misadventures, my mishaps from some of my honestly favorite hikes that I've done with other people and solo. But it's all to help you to not be me and have a much more enjoyable experience and not make the same mistakes and pitfalls that I have made along the way. So there are lots of different types of hikes, right? I think that for some people, that definition can be very varied. To me, if you're walking a distance in nature, a nature setting, it's a hike. I mean, you could say it's just a walk, if you're in a park. But to me, it's still a hike. I think for some people, they consider a hike to truly be where it's not paved, and it's actually, more in a forest type of setting, and it's not necessarily a paved walkway. But I would argue that I know certain state parks and regional parks that I've been to, the walkway is either partially paved or it's paved for the whole way, or it could even be a boardwalk. But to me, that didn't make it any less of a hike. That's just Lauren's personal opinion. To each their own. But I don't think that just because it may not be in the traditional sense where it is a trail, as opposed to some kind of man-made walkway, that it is not a hike. So just wanted to clear that up and get that out of the way. Don't at me and argue with me about it. Argue with your mama, because that's my opinion and I don't care. But I'm not one of those people who subscribe to some of the traditional, I think, outdoor recreation language and rules and all that kind of stuff. I'm a little bit more, I think, lax in free spirit. That's just my personal opinion. But I know to some people they are very much sticklers. And if you get into some of these outdoor groups, you may find yourself feeling a bit out of place or feeling as though you don't quite measure up or belong, just because some of those people can be very hardcore. There's nothing wrong with that, but it can also come across sometimes as a little bit elitist in the outdoor community. Sometimes it can make people, especially who are newer and less experienced, feel like, oh, well, if I'm not talking about hiking the Pacific Coast Trail or the Appalachian Trail, then my little hike at my local state park is not worth bringing to the conversation. And to that, I say, poo, that's crap. And it doesn't matter if you're hiking 27 miles if you're hiking 100 miles, or if your hike was 2 miles. A hike is a hike is a hike. So that's that on that. But I can't even really remember what my very first hike was per se. I guess I would say, to me, I think the first time I considered myself hiking was that first road trip that I took with my BFF to Alabama to go waterfall hunting. And getting to some of those waterfalls definitely required some hiking and some maneuvering to get to them. So I guess that's the first time I would consider those hikes. And boy, let me tell you, unprepared. We went in July. I remember that was the time of year. It was hot as hell. It was hot, y'all. And we had our bathing suits and we had little day packs. We had water and Gatorade. We had the essentials, but other than that, and this was before, the cell phones and the directions. This is back in the day when you had to go online to MapQuest. Telling my age there. Print your directions off and then set out on your adventure. So this was like early 2000s. I want to say right after I had graduated from college. So maybe like, I don't know, 2004, 2005, somewhere in there. But anyway, we were complete novices. Had no idea what the hell we were doing. And we just knew we wanted to see these waterfalls. And so off we went to explore with no preparation, no planning, no knowledge at all of what we were doing. I do not recommend that. I recall one of the hikes to DeSoto Falls required us to walk across the top of a dam, and then from that point you were on a wooded trail that descended downhill to get you to the shores of this waterfall. It was a fairly easy trail. It was definitely a worn trail. We didn't really have concerns about getting lost. What we did not factor in was the heat. And we also did not factor in the weather. And so we made this hike, got down to the bottom of this falls. Beautiful, took pictures, was awesome, yay us. Decided not to swim in this one, and a storm rolled in. So the clouds were rolling in, thunder was rolling in, and where there's thunder, there's lightning. That's the rule of the road. So we knew we needed to make our way up out of there before the rain set in, because again, this was a very, very, very steep descent to get to the base of these falls. And so if it rained, you could forget getting up. There was no way we will be able to take that trail back up in muddy and slippery conditions. Wasn't going to happen. So we didn't plan for that. Didn't check the weather. Didn't know what was coming toward us. And on our way back up, I got heat sick. Started feeling nauseous, was feeling like, gonna upchuck my lunch. I probably just was dehydrated, hadn't really had enough water for the heat that we were hiking in. So we had to stop on our way up. And it was really just, I think I did throw up. I recall, kind of laying there for a while. My best friend was trying to help me feel better. But then we heard that thunder. And I just remember like being sheer will, like you have to get up this mountain. Like this is not an option. You cannot stay here. We cannot go back down. You have to get off this mountain. And so with me feeling the way I was feeling, I mean, it really was just sheer will to survive and not be caught in a precarious situation, that we made it back up and out of there just in time before that storm rolled in, or we would have been screwed. So great day, awesome experience, wonderful memory. But had something really happened, we would have been in a real bad way. We had no kind of first aid kit. We had no map of the terrain or a park map in case we did somehow find our way off of the main trail. We did not check the weather. Those are all things that you should not do. And so, yes, it was fun. We were okay. But I definitely, at that time in my life, didn't really have a healthy respect for the outdoors, if you will, and just for how dangerous that could have been. But now another hike that I is one of to date, it's still one of my absolute favorite hikes that I've ever taken, is a hike around Lagoa de Fogo in São Miguel, Azores. This is one of the absolutely most breathtaking hikes that I have ever done. So I traveled to the Azores Islands back in 2015. And this was, it's one of those life-changing, life-altering trips. I've definitely talked about it before. It's the trip that changed my life, and it was my first international solo trip to this archipelago of islands that is owned by Portugal. It is in the middle of the Atlantic. It's in the middle of nowhere. But in my research for this trip, the little bit of research that I did, because it was definitely spontaneous, I did see this lake, and it's one of the things that made me want to go there. Lagoa do Fogo is jewel colored. Like, think of the most turquoisey, is that a word? Turquoisey? Sure it is. The most vibrant turquoise, jewel, blue, green, aquamarine body of water that you could picture. That's Lagoa de Fogo on a sunny day. It is amazing, and it sits. It's elevated because it's up in a mountain range. It's actually a volcanic crater lake. It is the highest elevated lake on the island of São Miguel. It is 1,886 feet above sea level. And it's formed from the cap of a volcano that collapsed just about 5,000 years ago. So in terms of the age of the earth, it's a fairly newish body of water. But it is one of the most scenic hikes that you will ever see. And there's a hiking trail that descends from the top of the crater down to the beach of the lake. Like, this lake has white sand beaches around it. And you can descend down to the bottom. I had found this article about this hike, and I was like, oh my God, this looks amazing. And then they were like, yeah, you can hike around the whole trail in 8 hours. And I was like, or not. Yeah, that's a bit long for me. I was definitely not that level of hiker to attempt an 8-hour hike, and certainly not by myself. But I figured I could at least hike down to the bottom, get to the shore, pretty much walk as far as I felt like walking, and then hike back up out of there. So I had planned to spend, up to 2 to 4 hours. I was willing to spend, kind of the early part of the day down there at that lake. So I did my research this time. By this time I was a little more outdoorsy. I had definitely gone on some other hikes by this time. I had been on a camping trip by this time. So I was definitely a little more knowledgeable overall. And what I did was I booked a tour to take me to this lake, because I had not yet decided whether I was going to rent a car. And that way allowed me to see the lay of the land, what I was dealing with, where the lake was, kind of eye it and see if I could find the beginning of the trail. Well, to my disappointment, this was one of those stops on the tour that was like a few minutes, literally like get out, stand on this crater rim, boom, take your picture with the lake behind you, and we're done. So I was a little bit disappointed, because I thought I would at least have time to find the trail, and that didn't happen. But at least I knew what I was dealing with. And I got to see why they called it Lagoa de Fogo. It's called that because smoke which is really fog. But back in those times, they thought that it looked like smoke rising from the lake like fire. And so the name literally translates to Lake of Fire, which is why it's Lagoa de Fogo. But what it is the fog rolls in off the Atlantic Ocean, and it sets in really heavy, especially at this elevation. You're basically in the clouds. And when it comes in fast, and it comes in thick, like to the point where you can't see your hand in front of you, to the point where while we were there, the fog rolled in. And so when we first got there, we could see the lake, even though it was an overcast day. And within minutes, the lake wasn't even visible, completely covered in a blanket of fog. And so that definitely was a clue to me to let me know, okay, you really got to be prepared for weather, for temperature changes, for, this fog, for your timing. Like, this is not, you can't BS your way through this one. You need to do some preparing. And so that is what I did to make sure that I could have a successful hike around Lagoa de Fogo. So for that hike around Lagoa de Fogo, I had my backpack that had all of my essentials in it. And actually, and here's a quick tip, you get this for free. A lot of the kind of survival kit type of things you have in your pack for camping, you can just use the same thing. You just can pare it down a little bit for a day hike. I had a compass, navigational device. I did have a printed map of the terrain that I found online. I had backup batteries for my cell phone, of course. I had plenty of snacks, plenty of water, and I had a pocket knife with the different tools and everything on it. I had my mace because I traveled with it, and as a solo female traveler, that's one of the things that I have with me if it is allowed in the country. I also had a first aid kit this time around, which I did not have the other place. And most importantly, I had checked the weather and the weather forecast. So I knew that I would be good and I wouldn't have to be concerned with an overcast or super foggy or rainy day. That hike, though, at Lagoa de Fogo, going down was fine. What did make it a bit of a challenge is that I am asthmatic. So anytime we're talking about high elevation for me, it makes things just a little bit more strenuous on me and my lungs, and I definitely have to take precautions. I made absolutely sure this time that, I had my asthma inhaler was with me and on me, so that in case I had, any kind of breathing issues, I did have my medication. But with the elevation, it was a little bit more challenging for me. Of course, going down the descent right into the crater was fine. And I was so geeked up. My adrenaline was high. It was beautiful. I had rented a car to go back after the tour so that I could do this hike properly. So I was super excited. But on the way down, it's rugged. It's this, just a dirt path. It's got different kind of steps of wood where people have kind of fortified the path going down along the way. So they're kind of sort of steps, but not really steps. You know what I mean? And then you get to a certain point where it's a ladder. It's a ladder made out of sticks. I don't know who put the ladder there. I don't know how long the ladder's been there. I was definitely concerned that I would not be able to get all the way down because I didn't know. But, I gingerly bared weight on the ladder and realized, okay, it's going to hold me. Should be fine. And if it's not fine, we'll know real fast. But I got down there to the shore with no problem. It took me, 40 minutes to an hour. And that's just because I was stopping along the way, taking my time, taking pictures, really taking in what I was seeing, and I wasn't in any kind of rush. And once I got down to the shore, I stopped, I did some yoga, I meditated, I prayed, and then I had packed me a little picnic lunch. I mean, I had the time of my life. I did not have a tripod, so I was trying to set up my camera on rocks and sticks and wood and all kinds of stuff, trying to get some shots with the timer. Most of them are a fail, but they're still great memories to go laugh at. And I just had a great time. I got down there. I walked as long as I felt like walking until I felt like, don't forget, you have to walk this back however far in you walk, since I was not doing an entire loop. And once I was tired, sat down, rested, just took everything in, and then I started to head back. And I actually met somebody along the walk. So I'm down there, right? It felt like I was literally alone. I could see people on top of the crater rim, but they looked like ants from way down there. And I saw this golden retriever running toward me from the other side of the lake. And I'm like, well, that's random. Where did this dog come from? And the golden retriever is running full force toward me. And then in the distance, I see a man just kind of leisurely walking, and the dog gets right up to me. He's like super friendly. He sniffed me, and then he kind of went on about his business, and he's just walking around and waiting for his owner. So this guy comes up, and little bald guy, and he starts talking to me. His English is broken, but he spoke well enough, for me to understand him through his Portuguese accent. His name was Philip, I believe is his name. Yeah, I think it was Philip. And he was just talking to me, really curious about what brought me there. He was a native Azorean, what brought me to that island. And, he hadn't seen anybody that looked like me, a black woman visiting, especially down there in such a remote place. So he was just really curious, super friendly. We had an awesome conversation. I learned that he was a ballet teacher. Back in his day, he wanted to know what I did about, did I have a son, and just my life back here in the States. And we had a great conversation. And that's one of the things that you love about travel, right? And what was funny was he was super chivalrous. So he was kind of like not wanting to leave me there alone. He wanted to make sure that I got back up out of the crater, okay. And I was kind of wanting him to just go ahead and go, because in truth, I had to pee. That's one of the things about nature, right? When you're in the wild like that, I mean, you got to go where you got to go. So this is not in any way, shape, form, or fashion is this a built up or commercialized area at all. It is wilderness. And so I wanted to kind of duck off behind a bush before I made my climb up and relieve my bladder. And my new friend would not go away. Like, he wanted to make sure that I was okay and help me up the ladder. And oh my God, I was like, what am I going to do? So I obliged, I headed back up out with him. He helped me up the ladder, and it was so cute. He put the dog, whose name was Scott, on his back to carry him up the ladder. It was super cute. So as we're making the climb up, I'm not going to lie, the elevation on the way back up started to kick my butt. And I just kind of took my time, didn't rush it. I stopped when I felt like I needed to rest and catch my breath. And we probably made it halfway up. And I finally told him, I was just like, I just had to be honest. I was like, Philip, you can go ahead up. I have to pee. And he understood. And he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I understand. You should have told me. He's like, so he wished me well, on my journey. And he was like, go do what you need to do. And then he left me, and he went ahead up to the top with the dog. And, I went and ducked behind a bush and did what I needed to do. And he did wait for me though at the top of the crater, which was really sweet, just to make sure that I made it okay. And gave me a hug and said goodbye. But that is one of the most memorable hikes that I've ever had. And although it was, reasonably, a little strenuous, and I just felt really confident that I was prepared for whatever situation might arise. When I started the hike, I had on layers because it was cold. It's a mountainous region. They get winds through there, and I knew that the weather could change very quickly. By the time I got to the bottom, I was hot. I was sweating bullets, and I kind of, I stripped down to a tank top by the time I was at the bottom. But it's just about being prepared. Okay, so speaking of being prepared, let's get into what you need to know to be prepared as a novice hiker. What are the things that you need to consider for setting out on a hike? Well, the first thing and kind of the most obvious is choosing the trail, right? Where you plan to hike. Obviously, you don't want to overextend or overcommit yourself too early. Your first hike shouldn't be, I'm gonna conquer the Appalachian Trail. Like, no, that's not how that works. You want to do something that is, easy to moderate, especially if you're somebody who doesn't do a great deal of walking. So you want to take a little bit shorter of a distance, especially considering the type of trail. If you're choosing a trail that's gravel and not paved or dirt, a traditional kind of wooded type of trail, it's going to be not what you're used to. It's definitely going to be more strenuous than just how it would be if you just traditionally walk around a track. You can't expect it to be the same. And even if it's a paved trail, but it's in a park, there's going to be some elevation changes to that trail. So again, it's not going to be what you are used to just on a normal, typical day. Personally, for beginning hikes, I would figure that, roughly you could have a pace of maybe 2 miles per hour. I wouldn't walk any faster than that. And I would try to keep your trail to a minimum of 2 miles in, and a maximum rather of 2 miles in and 2 miles out. 5 miles total, I would say, for your entire trail walk. I would not go much further than that when starting out. But again, your body, your fitness level. So just do what feels comfortable. The next thing that I would say is familiarize yourself with the trail. Get a map of the area, to look at what to expect. There's a lot of great resources out there these days. I personally really like the All Trails app, which you can download in the App Store. There's a free version and a paid version. The paid version does come with a little more bells and whistles. The free version doesn't allow you to save the map offline. That's a really great benefit to the paid version, is that the app will save the map and be available to you if you don't have cell service or Wi-Fi. But you can always just take a screenshot, and that's what I do to cheat. I take a screenshot of a couple of different vantage points of that map while I do have cell service, and that way it's saved in my camera roll and I don't have to worry about it. Of course, you can always be super prepared and have a paper version. I definitely recommend that if you are somewhere that's more of a backcountry trail and there is a true chance that you could get lost and not have service. Having a paper version of the map of where you are would come in handy, as well as some kind of compass or directional device. But definitely want to have an overview of the trail, know what to expect. understand whether the trail is a full loop or if you have to backtrack and go back the way that you came. But you definitely want to be prepared for that. Another big one, tell people where you're going. Let people know where you're going, what time you're going, how long you think you'll be in there, what time you plan to come out. I always do a check-in with my specific group of people to say, hey, this is where I am. This is where I'm parked. This is the trail that I'm doing. This is what time I intend to come out. And I always check in with them once I'm out to say, hey, I'm good. I'm okay. And that way, God forbid something does happen to you, at least there is kind of a timeline for any first responders or anybody who may have to be involved to find you or come and get you in case of an emergency. You definitely want to check the weather. Check it often. You can't plan a hike and just check the weather a week in advance. The weather changes daily, forecast change daily. You want to be checking the weather up until really the day of your hike because things could definitely change and, know if you need to make any adjustments to your plan. It is very important to have the right shoes and the right socks. The way to have your hike ruined and not be able to finish or accomplish what you've set out to do is by not having the right shoes. That can be the absolute worst. You don't have to necessarily have the big, heavy, clunky boots. I know that's what you see more likely online. But I do make sure you have something that's going to give you the support that you need. That's also going to offer the right kind of grip for the ground and just protect you from the gravels, the bumps, the rocks, and all that kind of stuff. But when it's hot here in Florida, especially, I may opt for my other shoe. I don't even know the right word for the shoe. It's like a cross. It's like if a hiking shoe and a sandal and a water shoe had a menage a trois, then this is what you get. So it's like a slingback slip-on type of shoe, but you can adjust the tightness to your foot. It has like breathing holes on it, so it's good for water as well. But then it has the grip on the bottom, but it's also very cushioned. That's kind of my go-to for a lot of the trails that I do. But for more serious trails and more serious hiking where you're looking at elevation changes, rocks, all that kind of stuff, true hiking shoes are the way to go. And I opt for something that's going to offer me ankle support. And it's not just about your feet, it's about your whole body. Like if you're trying to hike in the wrong kind of shoe, your back will hurt, your shoulders will hurt. And it is just it's uncomfortable altogether. Also, you want to break in any new hiking boots or hiking shoes that you purchase prior to the hike. You want to do some walks in them especially before a more strenuous and lengthy hike, because it might take a little time to get them to be a little more comfortable. And you also want to make sure that you have on just the right attire. You want to dress in layers so that you can, change clothes if needed and strip down to be a little thinner. I always go for synthetics, and that's just because cotton doesn't do well as far as wicking. Now they do have cotton specifically made for wicking and keeping the moisture away from your body. But things that are more like the dry fit type of material for that base layer tends to work very well. So just have layers and plan appropriately for where you're going to be. I know here in Florida, we definitely have the mosquito issue and the bugs. And y'all know that your girl does not do the bugs. So, the shirts I opt to wear, they're lightweight, but they have sleeves. And that is just because I don't like my arms being out and getting beat up. It also blocks you from the sun. And that's a segue to the next tip. You definitely want to be protected from the elements, sunglasses with UV protection, sunscreen, hats, have a cooling towel, those kinds of things to be prepared for the conditions of the weather. You want to pack light, especially if you're just talking about a day hike, right? So just have you a day pack with your essentials in it, and we'll cover what some of those essentials in your day pack should be. But have a nice light day pack. There's no need to pull out an overnight type of backpack that already weighs 5 pounds or 10 pounds by itself with nothing in it. You don't need that just for a day pack. Now, what should you have in your day pack? You want to have moderate first aid kit with things like antiseptic, band-aids, ace bandage wraps, something for stings like bee stings, wasp stings, tweezers, just those kinds of basics, gauze or wipes, Q-tips, those kind of things, but definitely some kind of antiseptic like Bactine or Neosporin. I opt for both. I think they kind of both serve a different purpose, and some kind of sanitizer in case you need to sanitize your hands for any reason. You can have your hand sanitizer. Also, alcohol wipes are another good thing to have in your first aid kit, as well as Benadryl for any type of unexpected allergic reaction. And you might want to have something for your skin like some kind of cortisone cream or calamine lotion, aloe, things like that. That'll be good for anything, any kind of irritant that you might come in contact with on your skin so that you can treat yourself. The next tip that I have for you is hydrate. Hydrate, 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 hydrate. I can't say it enough. That's the one that I'm probably most guilty of not doing, because here's the thing. Once you're already out there, you can't start hydrating then. You should be preparing your body a couple of days ahead of time, at least 24 hours. I recommend 48 hours ahead of time. You should be pumping your body with water and fluids because you're going to sweat those out. And if you have not already hydrated, the water intake you're having during the hike is really not doing anything for you because your body didn't have any reserves. So you're just sweating out what you're taking in immediately, and that's not going to help you. So hydration, super important. Make sure that you prepare for that, especially if you are somebody who, you're not the most fit and you're not outdoors all the time. Another thing you might want to consider, and this is going to depend on the level of difficulty of your hiking where you are. If you're doing a backcountry type of hike where there is truly a chance where you could get stuck, stranded, have to be overnight or anything like that, you want to have things like flashlight, insulation, type of wrap, repair kit type of tools, extra food and nutrition bars, extra water, and some kind of emergency shelter like a tent or even a tarp, and rope, things like that. If you had to get your Bear Grylls on and build you some kind of makeshift shelter, you want to have the tools to be able to do that if some type of emergency situation arose. The other tip I would have for you is just pace yourself. It's not a race. Take it in. Stop. Listen to the silence. Listen to the birds, listen to the insects and the bees around you. Take it in. Just have that one-on-one you and Mother Nature time. Don't feel like you have to rush. Pick a nice pace, a nice steady pace for you. And, after a couple of miles, just stop. If you feel like you need to rest. If you're tired, you're tired. It's okay if you don't necessarily finish what you set out to do. And an addendum to that tip, I would say, I like choosing trails that have a reward. And by that, I mean a view, an observation tower. My favorite reward is a waterfall. That is my absolute favorite. When we did a hike in the Smoky Mountains, we walked completely along the river. And so it was a babbling river just boiling and rumbling over the rocks. Oh my God, that sound is so soothing to me. I love it. And it's like hearing a waterfall constantly. So for me to walk that entire trail and hear water for 5 miles, heaven. That's absolute heaven for me. I mean, if I had been on that trail and I could hear that sound and it had been 10 miles, would have done it with no problem whatsoever, because just that sound to me is intoxicating. I love it. And I would have had no problem listening to that. So choose a trail is something that interests you, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And, the further you might be able to go, and it's nice to have something to look forward to on your trail versus kind of an aimless walk. If you know, oh, I'm going to get to this point and it's going to open up to this amazing meadow, or, I'm going to get to this waterfall or this lake or this observation tower I can climb, whatever it is. It's just great to have a reward, at the end of your hike. It's just a nice way to be like, to push yourself when you're tired, or, when you think maybe you can't do it, you have something to look forward to. And then my very last tip is go. It's that simple. Just do it. Don't be intimidated. Don't feel like just because you may be new and inexperienced that it's something you can't do. You can do it. There's tons of resources out there. In the show notes that will be on the blog site, I will have these tips as well as some of my recommended products, product recommendations to purchase for some of these things as well. And join a group. That's a great way to kind of get over your fear. You can ease into it. There's tons of groups all over the country. I'll be interviewing a lot of outdoor group leaders on the podcast this season. To have that information out there, I have a group, Adventure is a Lifestyle, on Facebook, and we try to do something quarterly. And our next hike, I will be posting that information here very soon, actually, for what our second quarter activity is going to be. So just get out there, do it, plan something, whether it's by yourself, with the group, grab a friend, get out there, hike, enjoy nature, and bathe yourself, in the forest and in the nature. It will do wonders for your mental health. It will do wonders for your spiritual health. There are so many studies out there about how spending time in nature is good for you. It's medicine. It is natural, God-given medicine. So just get out there and enjoy it. So those are my tips. I thank you guys so much for joining. If you have any questions, please send an email to podcast@outdoorsydiva.com, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, make sure you subscribe to the Outdoorsy Diva podcast. Be sure to check out Misadventures of an Outdoorsy Diva blog on outdoorsydiva.com. You can also keep up with me and my adventures, so check out all of my social channels. Find Outdoorsy Diva on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest.